Hello, Out Entrepreneurs. Rhodes Perry here, and welcome to episode number 36 of The Out Entrepreneur, a weekly podcast where I get to interview today's most inspiring LGBTQ bosses crushing it in business. So on today's show, we have Christy Haussler calling all the way from Key West, Florida. So Christy, thank you so much for being on the show. And I'm curious, are you ready to inspire fellow out bosses?
Absolutely. Ready to go.
Yes. All right. Well, Christy is a very special guest. She is the founder and CEO of Team Podcast, which is a full service podcast production company based in Key West, Florida. And since Christy is a podcast host at heart, she has set out to build a business that enables her to leave the golden handcuffs of corporate life in South Carolina and move to a place where she can be out, open, and happy. And I couldn't think of a better place than Key West to do that.
I know, right? I know. Yay!
Yeah. And Christy just recently launched a new podcast entitled Podcast Rescue. So I'm going to be tuning into that every day. Right?
You won't need it. You'll be fine.
Yeah. And the cool thing about the show is that it explores how Christy helps her clients move from the messy middle of podcasting to the magic middle. And so I love that. I love everything that you do, Christy. So I'm really curious. Tell us a little bit more about your business and what makes it unique.
One of the things that makes it unique is that I'm sort of a stickler for customer service, I guess. It's funny living in a place like Key West. It's very, touristy, and you would think everyone in Key West would be completely focused on customer service and all that. But my background is customer relations, and I just will not tolerate subpar customer service. And so I've set my business up in a way that is probably sometimes not the most efficient way, or maybe it's a little too controlling on my end, but I just demand that anything that we do is going to have to be customer friendly. And if it's not, we're not going to do it. Even if it means sometimes we have to do a process that is not the most efficient thing for us because it is the most efficient thing for the customer. And so that's one of the things that makes us unique. My business is kind of neat because it is a remote type organization. We have about 12 employees that are kind of all over the world. We've got a huge majority in the United States, but I've also got some in Canada, South Africa, Australia, and a few other places. So it's kind of a challenge, to manage a remote team in different time zones. And the good news is that people are working all the time. Somewhere people are working, So while we say it's 5 o'clock somewhere and that means one thing, it means something else in another time zone, and my folks are still working. So it's a fun thing.
That's the magic of your business. When you have a remote business, you can have that 24-hour model if you want it. And I think that's so cool. And it's one of the advantages of having an online business, right?
It is.
And podcasts are exploding. There's a podcast for everything. There's a podcast for LGBT entrepreneurs, right? And,
hey!
I'm a huge cyclist. There's tons of podcasts around that. Because your business is focused on making sure, on that line of quality customer service, that there's also quality podcasts. What in the world of this mode of communication has you most inspired, especially as it relates to your business?
It's very interesting because I think podcasts are sort of morphing. Even over the last several years, we've sort of seen big media roll into our little indie space over here and, try to get their cut of it. But what I am so excited about with podcasting is it is the ability of so many podcasts that are being started for social good and to have conversations that are not being had anywhere else online. And, it's interesting because I think even right now in the current political climate, we've all seen social media turn really ugly, or we've all seen the stress that can come of that. And what a refreshing place to be in, where you can actually sort of go as a respite to your favorite podcast. And whether you're, a woo-woo spiritual person, or you need yoga, or you want to talk about marketing, or you want to talk about organic gardening, it doesn't matter what you want to talk about. You can find your people there having those conversations and getting involved in the discussions you want to be involved in and you choose to be involved in, whether or not you physically have those kind of people surrounding you. I mean, we don't all live in areas where our, kindred spirits live right next door, even in the same community. And so sometimes, even though we're so globalized, it's really nice to be able to see so many people finding their tribe and finding their people and really sort of mobilizing for so many social good aspects of what can be in our society based on podcasts, And so I'm seeing more people come. Doesn't mean that there's no other goal besides social good, but I'm just thrilled with what I'm seeing and the people that are having difficult conversations in underserved communities, kind of like you're doing, but it's, it's not just the gay entrepreneurs now, it's the people that are suffering from infertility or the people that are suffering by themselves as a single parent. All these people are now getting to have their issues heard and their voices heard.
I love what you're saying. And maybe it's because you're calling in from Florida. That's where I grew up as a child. And
nice.
And this was a long time ago. But just if podcasts were around, when I was younger, I think my own self-actualization would have happened much quicker. I came out when I was in college, right? But I think, the world is so different. Before we started recording, we were talking about millennials and Generation Z and younger, and just how coming out, there's at least more connection because of the internet, and that empowers more people, especially if you are in more remote parts of the country or even the world. So I love, I mean, podcasting is just such an incredible medium. And as someone who is a woo-woo and into marketing and organic gardening, I can find it all, right?
All of those. And you wouldn't find all of those thriving communities in your local community, but you can be a part of them and still feel like you really know those people,
Absolutely.
So it's crazy because we have our internet friends are now becoming our in real life friends, which is freaking awesome.
It's a pretty amazing blend. And
it really is.
When I was reading your bio, I was really fascinated by your story. You left South Carolina. It sounds like you were in a really amazing job. You left the golden handcuffs behind. And you found freedom in your business. And, when I interview guests, typically there's one of two reasons why they start their business. And the first reason is that they had a purpose and they knew what that was and nothing was going to stop them. And so they either from the day one, when they needed to find work, they became entrepreneurs, or they left, the corporate life behind, similar to you. And the second reason is that for some people who have worked for a while in a corporation or even in a smaller business, they were working for someone else's dream, and they had to conform some aspect of who they were. They had to fit into someone else's culture, which caused a lot of anxiety or just a feeling of not being fulfilled and not being happy because you can't be your whole self. And so, Christy, I'm curious, which one of these kind of sides of the coin do you find yourself on?
Well, it's sort of a combination of both. When we left South Carolina, my wife is a school teacher and was teaching in public schools, and we could not be out and be not feel that her job was in jeopardy. They never say they're firing you because you're gay, but they find other reasons to fire you. And so we never really felt completely out or, completely open and free. And so, at that time, I worked at a company where I was driving 2 hours each way, 85 miles commute each way to work. And I found podcasting because I had listened to every audiobook in the library more than once. And I was, just consuming so much content to try to stay awake on the drive and that sort of thing. That introduced me to podcasting. And the more podcasts I listened to, and the more I realized there was this sort of subculture, counterculture, whatever you want to call it, going on out there of people that really, I don't want to say they didn't have respect for the 9-to-5, but there was an alternative to the 9-to-5. And they were like, they had already left. They were already doing their thing. So the more I listened to them and realized that there are actually people that are making way more money than I was. And I had a 6-figure job with full medical insurance and, matching 401k up to 7% of our contributions. And, very open, the owner of the company was gay, it was a lesbian. And so it wasn't like I was in a bad situation personally, but the more I got to listen to podcasts and the more I understood sort of what business was and how you kind of do it on your own and that you can actually make it and you don't have to live your life slaving away to other people. And, remember, I'm working 8 to 10 hours a day for that job. And then also driving 4 hours a day, 2 hours, almost 2 hours each way. So it really made me stop and think that if I was working this hard for somebody that was not really appreciating it, because, it's sort of like where I lived, even though they recruited me from what, for that job, where I lived was sort of like my issue, and the fact that I had a big commute, no one else did, was my problem and I had to deal with it. But if I was working that hard for them to make the money I was making, what could I do for my own? And could I ever have enough confidence to do it? And it was kind of strange because we came to Key West for vacation. Like I think half the people that live here that weren't born here do that, come on vacation and just can't get it out of their head. And so it basically became sort of not a dream, but just again, could we really could we do that? Is that something we could really do? And of course, I was making more money than my teacher wife, and so I had the bulk of the income for our family, and so just thinking about coming down here, where it's way more expensive than South Carolina, and talk about scary and family and everyone else thinking we are crazy for doing this. But the reason we wanted to be down here was because we could finally be open and we could be out and we could just be ourselves. And not that there's, we're not flying the gay flag from the flagpole or anything like that at our neighborhood, but it doesn't matter. It just does not matter down here. And we so felt that freedom from the first time we visited. So I kind of had both of those situations where I wanted to be out and be free, but at the same time, I realized I was working on somebody else's dream. And enough of that, because if I was working for myself, I knew it was going to be many more hours, but I also knew I was going to be able to do it.
Yeah.
And so, but everyone gets to that place in a different, on a different continuum. And for me, had I not been driving the 2 hours to work, I would have not been craving content and trying to look for something and realize that podcasts were out there. And during that time, I was a super consumer of podcasts that were really, really new at that point. And John Lee Dumas was, one of the ones that was producing the most content at that point in time. And so I ended up listening to him over and hearing stories over and over and over again of people that were doing their own thing and following their own dream.
Yeah.
And that those seeds get planted. But it might take a little while for them to grow and be watered and, actually bear fruit.
Absolutely.
And, it does.
And you're speaking to something that reminds me of a good friend and colleague who introduced to me, which was the concept of looking at limiting beliefs versus breakthrough beliefs. And I think you went from perhaps a limiting belief of like, how can I do this? Or, a true limiting belief is like, I can't do this. This is not me. And I don't know if that was your situation, but I have talked with a number of guests where that was something that was getting in the way, and something switches, the mindset switches. And I think for you, that those 2 hours every day, the podcast coming in showed you that you can, and that's the breakthrough belief that you in your heart, you can do this. And you might not have all the answers right now, but you can see the vision, and you saw that vision. You're like, I'm going to do this. I'm going to be free, and I'm going to live in a place where I can be free and do my business. And I think that is very, very inspirational for many people who listen to this podcast, just kind of showing them the way. And I really appreciate that. And I want to switch gears just a bit and talk more specifically about your own LGBT identity. And get a better sense that, as you're thinking and dreaming this dream and knowing that you don't want to fulfill someone else's dream by working for them, when you were thinking about building your business, did your LGBTQ identity influence that journey?
Probably, yes. It influenced me in that it probably made me more insecure about everything. And to kind of understand that, you have to understand that I was raised in a fundamentalist Christian home. I went to Christian schools all my life, and I went to a Christian college. Have you ever heard of Bob Jones University? It's kind of like the Citadel. It's like the Citadel. Yeah, exactly. On every,
I went to Notre Dame, so
it was like
better, but not
like the Citadel for Christians, right?
Yes.
It's just completely militant, and from me coming into my own identity took so long. I mean, I was 35 years old before I even allowed myself to say, I think I might be gay. What would have given me that idea? 35 years old, right? But once I did that, the good thing about being that old was I had already had a well-established career. I'd already, I was living in a place where I didn't have any family I was still living in Greenville, South Carolina, which is where Bob Jones is. And so I was completely on my own. So there wasn't any fear of, oh, I'm not going to have a roof over my head, or I'm not going to have the support of my family. I mean, I'd already been independent for a really long time. So in a lot of ways, that was kind of a blessing. But at the same time, knowing that so much judgment is surrounding the gay identity from all of those people in, my life, or that I had grown up with or surrounded myself with, it would be one of the last things I would really talk about. In fact, I would find myself filtering conversations and using pronouns that were non-gender specific, talking about, we did this and we went there and I am going to this place with some other people, and, and just being very,
know the pronoun
very filtered.
Yes.
Yeah. And so it didn't allow me to embrace in a positive way my gay identity. And I think part of aging, you do become a little less concerned about what people think. And even the more important in my journey was, coming down to Key West, where people don't care. People do not care. They're more concerned about how, what kind of person you are than what your sexual identity is. And so, I'm just now, I would say within the past, few years, comfortable saying my wife and I did this, and this is who we are. And, oh, yes, I'm bringing my wife, and, and just putting it out there, because I also know it can be a lightning rod for people. And I never want to be, I just don't want to be polarizing in any way. And I think that's part of the good girl. That's part of playing the role of the good Christian girl that, follows the rules and doesn't do anything crazy. But I think there's so much about that has shaped my level of confidence, or that has held me back from, being as confident as I should have been. Because if I had the confidence or had the reinforcement or knew I could have the support, I would have come out earlier and probably been, a good 10 years ahead of where I am now on this kind of continuum of being an out entrepreneur, So we all come at different places at different times. This is I was really a late bloomer,
Yeah. And this is really powerful what you're sharing, talking about feelings of being insecure and how that stems from just your own journey of realizing who you are in the world, even as a younger person, as you were going to school at Bob Jones University, which is not a safe place to be out, right? No, those messages that you're receiving certainly shapes how you show up in the world today, even though you've done the work and you're comfortable in your skin. And so I'm curious, because this is not uncommon. There's lots of people who tune into this program who, as they think about starting their own businesses, are concerned with, hey, I want to start my business. I want to take that leap of faith. That's already a scary step. Now I'm thinking about my identity. How do I leverage that? Or can I even be out in my business, or will that hurt my business? And I'm curious for you, Christy, as you started your business, can you think of a time where you thought twice? You may have been working with a client. Something may have popped up where you were either concerned that it would hurt your bottom line, or perhaps you felt unsafe. And I want you to share that story with us, because I think how you frame it, and especially how you were able to work around it, because clearly you're crushing it in business right now, that will definitely give our listeners a lot of hope and inspiration.
Yeah, and it's it's kind of a weird. I guess I'm in a square peg in a round hole or something like that, because I also embrace the Christian identity, and my faith is very important to me. And that is one area where, don't get into the Bible verse challenge or the sword drill or anything like that with me, because I've had all my whole life to prepare for it, right? So I can go toe to toe with people that want to quote scripture and that sort of thing. And at the same time, those are also the very people that can cut to my core and make me feel like I am not worthy because God is not okay with me. And even though I know in my heart, God created me this way, and I can only live my truest life by being who God created me to be. And if you don't believe in God and you believe in a higher power, it doesn't matter what you try to do to not be who you are. You're always going to come up short, and you're always going to sell yourself a little bit short because you're not living up to your truest identity. So for me, I do have several podcasts and several clients that are Christian shows. And I had worried about them many times whenever we would, a lot of times, I have pre-consultations with people before I take them on as clients. And, it's not like I ever go out and say, okay, I'd love to do your show. I can help you, and we can work together and it'd be great. Oh, by the way, I need to let you know before you do this that I'm also gay, and like I need their stamp of approval on it. And so I don't mention it. I don't talk about it. But at the same time, if they become friends with me on Facebook, or they, know anything else about me, they'll eventually realize that. And hopefully by that point in time, I will have been such a winning part of their strategy and such a help to them, and gone so above and overboard with doing everything I can to help make their business successful, that won't be something that they hold against me. Now, again, that's still coming with a lot of baggage, right?
Sure.
You know what I mean? Yeah.
And I love that I just want to jump in. I love what you're saying right there, because you're talking about building those one-on-one relationships and leveraging the skills and all that you have to bring to bear to all of your clients, right? And they're getting to know you professionally as someone who's super committed to making sure that they reach success. And as they get to know you, you're not hiding any aspect of who you are. You're implicitly out, right? It's like, if someone asks about your family, you're going to talk about, those folks that are involved in your family.
Right.
You may talk about your partner. You may talk about your kids, whatever that looks like. I think that's really key, because you've already shown them what you can do, the results and the value that you can give. And I think that that's an interesting strategy that hasn't yet been shared on the show. We often have guests that will just say, from day one, I was 100% out. And in those pre-consultations, that's where people are just like, hey, I just want you to know I'm LGBT, deal with it or don't work with me. And I think your approach is really clever, because you're helping shift hearts and minds. And I think that that's key. And that's what all the research says, one-on-one conversations. I think that it's so powerful that you're a member of a faith community and you're able to reach people that some of us just can't. And I think that is so key.
It's so interesting that you say that, because in some ways I do feel like I might need to be the face of a gay Christian to some of those people. And though, I can speak to the Christian side of it, and I can talk to them about how God led my path. I can talk to them specifically how God led me and my wife together, and how we are so much better together as a duo than we are, individually as a single person, But so the interesting thing about that is that I do view it as sort of, especially, I guess, with all the political things we've been through lately, you feel like there's a line in the sand, and you're either gay or you're a Christian, or you're this or you're that. And it's just all very black and white, and in general media. And so for me, it is very, very important that whenever people that are potentially condemning meet me, they understand first that my faith is in alignment with theirs. But at the same time, I also want to be able to open them up to the fact and understand that I might be the only gay Christian that they know, or that is out to them. And so when they find that out, I do feel like I sort of have a little bit of a responsibility to let them know that we do exist, and we can, some of the most spiritual people I know are gay people. It's missing a whole segment of society whenever you shut us out and say we can't be part of the Christian movement or anything like that.
Right. And I love that you're taking your faith, you're taking your identity, and you're taking your identity as a business owner, and you're able to impact those other businesses that are rooted in faith, and especially in Christianity in the United States. LGBT people, our sexual orientation and our gender identity are only two adjectives that describe us as full human beings. And, on top of that, you're a business owner, you're a woman of faith, and that's huge. And I think that no doubt is having a big impact on the clients that you're working with. And on that note, I wanted to say, I want to keep talking about this. And we also have to go to a sponsorship break. So that's what we're going to do right now. For our listeners, I know you're on the edge of the seat. I know that this is a fascinating conversation. So don't go anywhere, because when we come back, we're going to get a chance to learn a little bit more about Christy and her business.
HR and diversity professionals. Are you struggling with engaging LGBTQ talent? Do you stay awake at night worrying about limiting litigation risks? Have you considered seeking support around these concerns, but just aren't sure where to turn? Look no further. Rhodes Perry Consulting offers you solutions with the Engaging LGBTQ Talent A to Z certification. This proven 4-week mentorship program delivers skills, offers support, and connects you with other professionals committed to transforming themselves and their workplaces. Learn more about this cutting-edge program by visiting rhodesperry.com and use the promo code RPC for a 10% discount. Take action and visit rhodesperry.com.
Welcome back, Outbosses. We are now going into our bonus round, where we'll have the chance to get to know Christy a little bit better, gain some insights on how we can bring our whole selves to work, and then learn how to stay in touch with Christy after today's conversation. All right, Christy, are you ready for the quickfire questions?
I am. I hope I'm on my game.
All right, no doubt. You are. You are. Okay, so in one sentence, what does it mean to bring your whole self to work?
It basically means not to shut out the parts of me that I feel insecure about, because I think we all face that every single day. Got to include those too.
I love that. And what's one personal habit that helps you master yourself and your business?
I am an action taker, and I will stare fear in the face, and I will basically give it the 5 seconds to overwhelm me, and then I will move on. So it's fear action taking, and not being afraid to let it paralyze me.
I love that. That just made me think of Brene Brown and Teddy Roosevelt, the idea of daring greatly to step into that ring, be with the lions, and whatever happens, like, you were brave enough to get in there. And
absolutely.
Yeah, super smart. So name one thing that you readily delegate in your business to stay focused on what you're good at.
I have a couple of things, but it is a lot of the tactical task with podcasting. It's the show notes, it's the audio editing, and it's a lot of the project management. It's taken me a while, but I'm there.
Oh, I love that. We have to talk after this, because I want to get there.
Yes, exactly.
Get there. Okay, so I know that you're a huge consumer, as you've said earlier on the show, of both podcasts and audiobooks. So I'm curious, what's one book or podcast that has contributed to your success as a boss?
Well, there are so many, and I tend to be right now very focused on the podcast specific ones. But one of them, this one has nothing to do with LGBT people at all, but I love to listen to Brandon Gailey's show, The Blog Millionaire, because he's just very, very good at giving you little bite-sized chunks of 3 things that you can do every single day to improve your website or your blog posts or your SEO. And it's awesome. I
love that. And can you share one piece of advice to inspire the next generation of outbosses to take that first entrepreneurial leap?
The very advice that I would give is the advice that I didn't want to take, and is, if something scares you, do it. And I was scared, and it took a whole lot longer than it should have for me to do it.
Fear is real, and especially in starting your own business, it's it's hard to see what the other side looks like. And if you can wrap your mindset around shifting that fear, shifting those limiting beliefs, and transforming them into a breakthrough belief, you're on the path, and you can do that. And I think, like, if that's one breakthrough belief, just lean on. You can do it. It's been done before. And I believe in everyone who's listening to the show who's thinking about taking that business idea and turning it into action. So, Christy, I want to thank you again for being on the show. It truly has been an honor, and I know that you've already inspired so many outbosses out there. For now, can you share with us one way that we can stay in touch with you and learn more about your business?
Sure. There's basically the best way is going to be the teampodcast.com website, and you can find me there. There's some contact information that you can go through the website to get, and anyone that we can help. There's a lot of underserved communities that are we're just waiting for a podcast. So if anyone feels compelled to begin a podcast and, just wants to talk about some of the realistic challenges and or potential opportunities, be more than happy to chat with them about that.
All right, Outbosses, you heard that. So Christy is ready, willing, and able to be there to support you with all of your brilliant ideas. So I want to hear your voice, and I want you to take advantage of that. So definitely be sure to reach out to her at teampodcast.com. We'll definitely be sure to include that in the show notes. So for now, I want to thank everyone for tuning into this week's episode. It's always my privilege to connect you with so many inspiring outbosses like Christy. So as a next step, you know where to find the show notes. It's at outentrepreneur.com. And be sure to subscribe to the podcast if you haven't yet, and consider leaving a rating and review in iTunes. And for now, keep being your authentic selves 100% of the time.